Coming up on today's show.
And I would switch. I would get a little bored, and I would start to feel like this isn't exactly what I want. And so I would just switch schools or switch job responsibilities. And knowing that it still wasn't exactly the right fit for me, but not really knowing what the right fit was, and knowing now, looking back, that there was some fear involved also of what else would I do?
Now it's time to relaunch with best-selling author, personal growth expert Joel Boggess and his wife, dentist and business guru Dr. Pei, as they uncover the hidden truths and stories from the most successful and engaging people on earth.
Hi, it's me, Joel.
And this is Pei.
Welcome to Relaunch, your daily dose of fresh ideas, inspiring stories, and practical solutions to help you build a business and a life that you love. And if you are a daily listener, welcome back to the show. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for joining in the before and the after show online conversations. And if you are new here, this is what you can expect. Unique insights, aha moments, and actionable information from self-made successes that share their trials, tribulations, and their come-from-behind victories. And before we introduce our guest today, I just want to remind you that today's promotional partner is Audible. And it is one of the best places that you can find your favorite audiobook titles. And if you haven't checked them out yet, then this is the perfect time for you to take action and do that. And for new members, they have a wonderful no strings attached 30-day trial membership where you can try it out and see if it's for you. You can search through their thousands of titles. You can pick out your favorites, and then you can even download an audio book for free, yours to keep no matter what you choose to do. Just open your browser right there on your phone and go to relaunchshow.com/audible. Again, relaunchshow.com/audible, and sign up for their easy peasy 30-day, no strings attached trial membership. And Pei, I am really looking forward to speaking to today's guest. You know why?
Sure.
Okay, I will. Well, because I, like many entrepreneurs, authors, and podcasters, struggle with time management, and frankly, I struggle with how to maximize it and how to be the most productive that I can. And today's guest is going to help us out because she is a time strategy visionary. Lisa Crilley Mallis, she is our guest today, and she is a master at cutting to the heart of overwhelm and helping us to regain control of our schedules and our life. And she has a handy dandy book out called 30 Days to Success. And of course, we're going to link that up in the blog article that accompanies this episode. Might get a chance to talk about it a little bit later on in today's show as well. But before that, welcome Lisa to Relaunch. Good to have you on.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and listen to many, many episodes. So it's a thrill to be able to be on the other side of that.
Oh, we really appreciate you listening to the shows. And if you're a listener, Lisa, then you definitely know how we roll on this show. This show is all about the relaunch. And while we've all experienced numerous launches and relaunches throughout our life, I generally ask our guests to zero in on the relaunch that has been the most significant for them or that has been the most transformational. And then we just kind of unfold the story from there. And we'll do that with you here in just a few minutes, if that's okay. But first, I like to start off the shows with a quick piece of takeaway gold. So let me ask you this. Based on your experience, Lisa, what is the root cause of this emotion that we sometimes call overwhelm? And what is a simple remedy that we can use to curb it or to either stop it right there dead in its tracks? So let's start by that. Well, what do you think?
What I've found the biggest cause of overwhelm is just that feeling that things are starting to get out of control. Too many things to do, not enough time. And so it starts to build up bigger and bigger in your mind, and you get to the place where you just don't know where to start. And many of my clients will say, I'm so overwhelmed, I just need to go take a nap. And because it's just, I need to shut off my brain. And so the easiest way that I've found to move past that feeling of overwhelm is to actually to give your brain a rest, get everything out of your brain. And so some people call it a brain dump. Dump everything that's in there and get it all written down so that you can see it. And then once it becomes visible and tangible, often it's not as overwhelming because you can start to make a plan of attack. But when it's all sitting there in your brain, it just keeps magnifying and growing larger and larger. So for some people, they may talk that into an app on their phone so that they have a place to, just basically it's a place to capture it. Maybe someone jots it down. Typically, it's a mess when it comes out.
Sure,
it's not nicely neat checklist. It's nothing. It's just get it all out of there, and then you can begin the sorting process. Some people, when they do a brain dump, they'll put one idea on a different sticky note. And so they can then start to move it around on whatever their working space may be, and they can start to group things like personal and business or by different projects. Because typically in our brains, we pick up milk is sitting right there next to the next idea for a blog post, which is sitting next to something you need to do for a client. And it's all jumbled in there together. So it's getting it out and then sorting it, whatever that process may look.
Okay, this is a great anecdote that you started off today's show with, because not only is this a practical solution, giving yourself a brain dump, but you've also kind of introduced the idea that, you know what, there can be different ways to do it. You might speak it into your phone and record it. You might put it on Post-it notes. You might just jot it down on a blank sheet of paper that's in front of you. I love how you're giving options instead of here's the rule, this is how you do it, kind of thing.
My way will only work probably for me. So, Dr. Pei, your way will be different than yours, Joel, which will be different than mine. And so it's finding the solution that best fits for you. I mean, all of our relaunch stories are different, as is our time management solution. It's what's unique to you that works for you. See,
I love how this conversation is kind of unfolding, because one of the things that I remind people often, and I'm sure you do the same thing, Lisa, is that, one rule book does not fit everyone. And, as best as people's intentions are sometimes, where they try to just think, okay, well, this worked for so-and-so, so this has got to work for me. Gosh, setting yourself up with that kind of an expectation can lead to a lot of frustration, if not disaster. But giving yourself options and being gentle enough with yourself to allow yourself that a little bit of play and experimentation, that can be a difference maker.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Okay, so backing up a little bit and talking about Lisa's relaunch. We've all experienced many of them, but which one do we need to zero in on for you today?
And you're so right. There are so many. my journey has been just that, a journey. But I'm going to share with you, when I first started in my professional career, I was working in high school education as a teacher and an administrator and a math tutor. And I had been in that field for 15 years. Mm-hmm. Different schools, different jobs, but still in the field of high school education.
Okay.
And I was good at what I did. I enjoyed what I did, and my identity was definitely tied up into what I did. Tell me about you always started with, I'm an athletic director, or I'm a teacher, or it always was there. It was never about me, the person, but the job that I held. And I would switch. I would get a little bored, and I would start to feel like this isn't exactly what I want. And so I would just switch schools or switch job responsibilities. And knowing that it still wasn't exactly the right fit for me, but not really knowing what the right fit was, in knowing now, looking back, that there was some fear involved also of what else would I do if I left my safe place of education, which I'm very good at and I enjoy doing, but I'm not feeling 100% fulfilled. What would I do? My undergrad degree is in math. My graduate degree was in educational administration. What job does that lead to? And so I stayed, and had a couple different relaunches throughout that period, but basically kept coming back to education. And as I started to get more and more frustrated, I thought, you need to start doing something different. And so I pulled back and started to work, still in education, but part-time at 35 hours a week, and started to build a business on the side. And I wasn't really sure what I was doing, but I thought, well, I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to really, that's what I want to do. I know that's what I want to do. I'm going to work for myself. And so I started to think, well, what do I want to do? And started to build out a website and making a couple contacts and contacting legal for contracts and contacting an accountant, and started to get the structural pieces in place, but not exactly sure what it is that I wanted to do, but feeling like that's okay because at least I was moving forward somewhere. And I would
So, by the way, sorry to interrupt, Lisa.
No.
When you set up that first website or whatever corporate structure, what was it, if you don't mind me sharing?
No, great question. Thank you. I started to go down the road as a professional organizer. And so very much removed, at least on the surface, for what I was currently doing. But I felt that there was a systematic approach to that. It seemed to be something I thought I would be good at. And I was kind of all over the place. I wasn't thrilled with where I was. I didn't exactly know where I wanted to go. And so I was taking a really long time going nowhere. I started to pick up some part-time clients in the evening, so I would work all day, and then I would do some work in the evening, and I was tired and crabby and probably could have stayed in that path for years. Until one day I'm at lunch with a colleague, and she was just a couple years into teaching, and she was getting married, and she laid out this plan of how she was going to get married during the summer. She was going to work part-time in a family business so she could start learning the ropes, so that after she was married and they decided to have a family, she would have everything she needed to move on. And I thought, here's this awesome woman who is 15, 20 years younger than me and has it all figured out. And it's put into place the steps she needs to take. I could be looking back 5 years in the future back on this moment and still be where I'm at right now, working here part-time, figuring out what I want to do. And it was at that moment, I could remember it very clearly. I was like, it has to stop. It has to change now. And so that was one of my turning points, but that was the most recent turning point as I was figuring out what I wanted to do was, it's time. Move forward, do something.
And that was a catalyst right there. That's when it moved from being a relaunch of choice, you're making a choice to do something differently, to it being a relaunch of necessity. All of a sudden, you know what, I have to do something differently, do something different. I have to experience myself differently, and I have to allow other people to experience me differently as well.
Absolutely. Because I could have continued to build a business for years, part-time, because it was safe. I would still have the identity of, I work for the school part-time. Like, I had all those outs. Well, I'm still trying to figure out my way, finding my way. And then that was the point where I realized is you've been finding your way for a really long time, but specifically working part-time and building this business for 5 years. What are you doing?
So
that was the piece.
So what kind of fear and doubt that came upon you when you said, I'm turning this off and turning it full throttle?
So much. Because, you're giving up the known for the unknown. And then you're laying it out there and you're saying, this is me now. This is my new identity. And especially because I didn't have all the pieces figured out. And I am definitely a planner. And so if I'm going to move forward, I need to have a plan of where I'm moving to. And at this point, I had just said to myself, you're moving forward. I sat down with the budget. I sat down with my husband, and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I gave them my notice. And it was a school year, so I had, 5 months. So I had a very good amount of time, but I put an end to it. Instead of going year to year to year, thinking, well, next year I'll make a move. It was, okay, in 5 months, you're making this jump. And at that point, I thought, okay, what do you need to do to support you to continue to make that jump? Because the fear was, we talked about overwhelming at the top of the show.
Right.
The fear was definitely overwhelming, and I needed a plan.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Now, how did you, from a practical standpoint, wade through, the fear, the doubt? I don't know, maybe there was some even guilt in there as well. How did you wade through that?
The first thing I did was I figured out what was going to be like my bridge step, because I had a couple clients, but they certainly weren't enough to carry me through.
Okay.
And when you say guilt, absolutely, because in my mind it's like, oh my gosh, we're going to go from a 2-income family to my husband's going to carry the entire financial load while I get my feet under me.
Okay, so talk a little bit about guilt, and how you were able to find peace with that.
And it's still, I will say, that's still, like when you say find peace, I think that's still an ongoing piece for me, is finding peace in general with any of the choices that you make as an entrepreneur.
Sure, fair enough.
So at that point, it was the idea of, I can find peace with this as long as it's short term.
Yeah.
I can let go of that financial, and I don't want to say burden because it's not a burden, but my part of what we are as a unit, I can let go of that as long as I can do it for a defined point in time.
Okay.
So I don't know if when I made that jump, if I didn't have some sort of a plan for income in place, that I would have been able to find any peace or much peace at all.
Okay.
I agree. So Lisa, earlier you mentioned you start planning, you start looking at your budget and how much it needs, how many clients at that moment you had. And I just want you to speak to our listeners here. How much planning is enough here? And
speak to listeners, speak to me.
And me.
For me, the piece that I was able to do was I was able to subcontract my services to the school that I was currently working at, but do it as a business instead of as an employee. And so though I wasn't doing exactly the work that I thought I might want to do with my business, because at the time it was professional organizing, which is not at all where I am right now, I was able, though, to fit a piece of that financial piece in. So that gave me that initial sigh and breath, because I was able to work fewer hours for more money because I was able to come in as a subcontractor. And so when we say how much planning do you need, that once that piece fell into place, I had a little bit of relief and a little more peace, and then could move forward with the plan. Looking back, would I have done it differently? I probably would have had a much more solid plan. But I've been working on finding that for 5 years, and it has gotten me nowhere.
Let me ask you,
I think there's that balance.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough, Lisa. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Let me ask you this: what are some of the things that you learned or relearned about yourself, your possibilities, your potential, and your value as you begin to learn about yourself in many different ways?
One of the pieces that I definitely relearned from that whole process was the fact that I had a skill set that I didn't necessarily own. Like, I just assumed, because I was very good at time management, because I was very good at taking big, huge, crazy things and breaking them down so that they were doable, because I was very good at organizing thoughts and tasks and those pieces, I just kind of assumed everyone was able to do that. And so I never owned that was my unique gift. And, as people will say, it's your brilliance. I never owned that up until this transition time. And in fact, often I would apologize for it. I'd be in a meeting with people, and the meeting would be going all over the place, and I'd say, "Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what's our focus again?" And I would be apologizing because I couldn't figure out where they were going, because they didn't know where they were going. And we've all been in those meetings, and so And now that's me. That's what I bring to the table. That's what I bring to clients and to organizations and to whatever. And so I own that piece now, which before that time, I didn't.
Okay, so what can we, from a practical standpoint, help people understand right now about when it comes to owning your brilliance? Because we all have that within us, and like just what you did, I think we all kind of apologize.
What helped me see it was the fact that and it's definitely intervention.
Sure. Yeah.
There were a number of people around me who I respected who came to me with the same message. Will you help me with this? You're really good at this. Will you help me set up systems because I have 2 VAs and an office assistant and I never know what to have them do, so we all just sit around and talk. Well, that's not a good use of your time. Or someone else, would you help me with this? I have so much on my plate, I don't even know what to start with first. Because you're really good at that. And I needed someone to connect the dots for me, to say, this is where I'm struggling, and I'm asking you for help because you're good at it. Not because you're my friend, not because I know you, but because this is a skill you have. And so I think if you're on that flip side struggling with, what's my brilliance? Oh my gosh, that lady, what is she talking about? Ask the people around you, what is it that you see that I do well? Or what do you value in our friendship or our relationship or our working partnership or whatever that may be? And they will come right out right away and tell you what you're brilliant at, because everyone can see it, even if you can't.
That is so true. And we actually spoke about this from a different angle. And I'm so glad you brought it up again. Because when we try to figure out our brand, what we're good at, what kind of business that lined up with our gifts, this is a very important piece. So let me go just slight deeper with you, Lisa, that finding people around us that give us that feedback, which is so key in our growth in this area. In your particular case, where did you find those people who actually point out your natural talent?
And thank goodness I didn't have to go searching for them, because I don't know if I ever would have when they came to me. So some were friends of mine. Some were acquaintances that I kind of knew, but didn't really have a strong relationship with. Others were at the job that I was leaving. As I started to say to people, well, I'm making a move. I'm starting my own business, and they're like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, professional organizing, time management, and kind of graying all over the place. Oh my gosh, you will be so good at that because you have XYZ skills. Mm. And so because I'm honestly, Dr. Pei, if I had to go out searching for them, I don't know if I would have. Because that was such a vulnerable and raw time for me. I think I would have been afraid to ask someone and then be like, I don't know what you're good at.
Wow. Well, thank you again. And I just want to add briefly, and before we talk about your book and your business, the ReLaunch fan club and the listeners that in a private Facebook, how they interact with each other and pointed out the gifts of each other. It has been just... I'm loving the ladies in that group.
They're discovering things about themselves that they didn't even know that they had, because, like everyone, they're so involved with being themselves, they just don't understand fully what they have to offer to themselves in the world.
Right.
Very good. Okay, Lisa Crilley Mallis, that's who we're talking with today. And I mentioned her journal-like book right at the beginning of the show, 30 Days to Success. But she also has another book out, which I haven't mentioned yet. It's called Your Time, Your Life, a busy woman's guide to simplifying your day. And as we kind of come in for a landing a little bit here, Lisa, if you could just give us some tips, some actionable guidelines that we can put to use today to be more productive in our day, to take action, to take ownership of our genius and brilliance, and also ownership of our schedules. I think that would be a great way to end up end up today's show?
Absolutely. And so the piece that I want to come back to is what you inadvertently said is take action. Absolutely, the first step is take action. I'm a planner. Many people are planners. I could have planned myself into nothing for years. And I'm not saying there's not use for a plan. There absolutely is. So if you're sitting here wondering what to do next, it's take a step forward, whatever that may be. One of the things that greatly helped me was that I did hire a business coach. Once I realized I didn't know what I was doing, and when I already made the leap, I went out and found someone to help. But it's definitely that idea of taking action. Don't get so caught up in your daily task list or to-do list that you lose sight of what your big vision pictures are. We can to-do ourselves to death and not get any closer to our goal because we're so focused on the forest for the trees or whatever phrase you want to use in that area. So it's a matter of, are your daily tasks aligning up to your big goal? And if they're not, how are you going to start to make sure that they do? And in my case, they really weren't. I was spending the majority of my time working at a job I didn't love, thinking I'm going to try to do something else, but not really sure what. And I needed, to move forward and figure out how do I start to connect those.
Fantastic. Great tips, great advice. Lisa Crilley Mallis is our guest today. Of course, we're going to have all of these social media hotspots and the go-to places in the blog article that accompanies this episode. Really, really appreciate your time today. I'm so glad that we were able to make this show happen, and we really appreciate your listening to the ReLaunch show. It means more to us probably than you'll ever know that people are tuning into that show on a daily basis. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you for having it.
Lisa, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And again, thank you for being here today. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in. You can also access our show from many mobile apps and by visiting our website. For today's show, just go to relaunchshow.com/270. You'll also find show transcripts and additional resources to support your relaunch into the life and business that you love.